Hi, I'm Long Bay Symphony Music Director Charles Evans, back with another installment of Speaking of the Arts. Today's episode is a tribute to one of the Long Bay Symphony's most distinguished members, Principal Harpist Nancy Brennand, who recently retired from playing with us after 16 years of service. Before moving to the Grand Strand, she had an illustrious career around the New York area, playing for great conductors such as Leopold Stokowski. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Nancy. Hi, I'm here now with our Long Bay Symphony former principal harpist, Nancy Brennand. And Nancy had been with us for, as we were talking, like around 16 years. And unfortunately, at the time of her retirement, we were in the middle of COVID, so we didn't really get to give her a proper farewell. I probably would have recognized you, for the audience to understand that you were retiring after that many years. And we weren't able to do that. So I thought it would be nice, as part of this sort of demonstration, if you will, about the idea that we have. Well, you just have no idea that the kinds of people, the numbers of people who've moved down to this area, both from the standpoint of our audiences and supporters, people with connections to music, but also our very own musicians. So I think, Nancy, I unfortunately haven't gotten the whole picture from you, but rather just bits and pieces over the years. But you've had quite a distinguished career and varied career. But let's just start off with the basics of what brought you down to coastal South Carolina.
Well, I came down to be near my son, who was living in Brunswick County. And so he still is here, and it's worked out very well. I knew not a soul other than him.
That's a bold move, actually.
I've always done things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, if I make up my mind, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works out very well.
Yeah, well, we're so pleased that you, and we've had other examples like this of people who move from busy musical areas and can be a part of the symphony and bring the level up as we go along. But just tell our viewers a little bit about your overall background before you came here.
Well, I was a graduate of Northwestern University, and where I had majored in harp, but I had really gone there more as an organist.
Oh, wow.
And
now that I didn't know.
I only had 1 year of a rather poor teacher in Baltimore playing the harp. And didn't much like it until I got to Northwestern, but I was very good on the organ and the piano.
Wow.
So, and I had a wonderful Italian teacher, and he really opened up many new things for me, and I really concentrated on the harp and started practicing that 60 hours a day and letting all the other instruments go.
At some point you have to do that, but I had no idea you played the organ like that. As I think we were talking about my dad being an organist, and he studied with Harold Gleason at Eastman back in the day. It was the big sort of wrote the book on harp on organ playing. But anyway, so from then.
So at Northwestern, I was singing in all those the a cappella choir and everything. And every year we did a requiem with the Chicago Symphony at the Symphony Hall.
Wow.
And with Bruno Walter, no less.
Oh, gosh.
Well, so what an eye-opener that was.
Yeah.
And by the time I got the singing in the choir, my voice was already hoarse and I couldn't really sing that well, but I knew the notes and I could keep a tune. But when I watched him, I decided I have to be a harpist. And
because of the involvement in orchestra.
Oh, I was so amazed because he...
such a gentleman, too.
Oh, yes, and he knew every language of every person in that orchestra and spoke to them in their native language.
Wow. And a close friend of Mahler, too.
Yes. And he made us look kind of ridiculous at the very beginning. He didn't mean to, but he came to the college and put up his baton for the first beat, and we sang in English, and he expected German. And all the soloists were expecting German. Cesare Ciabi and other people from the Met. Wow. And so the solution was we would sing in English and they would sing in German.
Oh, wow.
And so that was a start. And so at rehearsal, I was so amazed that he could talk with every single orchestra member in their native tongue. And then he would criticize us. He would just put down, well, look at the score. It says pianist. It says guitar. I mean, he did it. I mean, why didn't we see that? You know. So I soon learned to look at the score a little better. You know, that was God right there.
Yeah.
And so then at Chicago too, the harpists were treated like prince and princess.
Oh, yeah.
They had platforms with wheels, and the harps were on them and backstage where they could tune, and then they wheeled in these platforms, and then they played. And I thought, oh boy,
You
that's
got to do
something.
that.
Well, I never got to play on a platform like that. But
Well, what was your first professional job as a
well, it
harpist?
was really. Then I went to New York City, and I studied really hard there after I graduated from Northwestern, and studied with Mildred Dilling, who was with Columbia Artists, and she even had taught Harpo Marx. But
I remember those scenes.
yeah, but anyhow, he had discovered that he was playing backwards until he saw her picture on the poster. So he decided he'd call her up and get some pointers. But anyhow, I studied with her and Grangeny from Juilliard,
Sure.
and then my first job was, oh gosh, well I played with the Baltimore Symphony first, and they needed a second harp. And then my parents were still there, and I went down and played.
Now, who was that? Was that Steinberg?
Oh no,
No,
it
not
was
that
at
was
that
Pittsburgh.
time.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
The wrong city.
I got there at a good time when they were auditioning for a new conductor because Massimo Recchia had died. Reginald Stewart, rather, from the Peabody. And so they were auditioning all these wonderful conductors, of which they couldn't afford, but
Yeah.
I got a chance to play with them.
Yeah.
So that was like Munch and
Oh, wow.
the guy, Steinberg or something,
Yeah.
whoever was
Yeah.
with the Swiss Romand at that time.
Anselme?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and then when I was in New York City, studying with Mildred, I went to the National Orchestral Association, which was Leon Barzan conducting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He later conducted the Philharmonic, but this was a free program. You didn't have to pay anything. You had to audition, and so they were semi-professional students, graduates of all the
I think
conservatories.
that still exists to this day in some
I
form.
don't know, but that
Or
was
some-
wonderful.
yeah, something very
and we
related.
gave radio
Yeah,
broadcasts
yeah.
every week, and that I got a lot of opportunities then. And we played at Carnegie Hall. I remember playing the Wagner Tristan and Isolde,
Yeah.
and for the first time. And anyhow, that was really exceptional. And then I got a job at Halifax in Nova Scotia.
Wow.
In Canada, they needed a
Well,
harpist.
that's interesting. That
And
must
I
have
said
been an
yes.
interesting place to live.
I was there for a
Gorgeous.
year and a half, and I
Wow.
had 8 harp students.
Huh.
And we had a very nice conductor from New York City, Thomas
Hmm.
Mayer, and he wanted to do all the big works, and we only had one bass. And we had other musicians from the band, and they all wore kilts when they played, you know. So
That's
and
funny.
it was interesting. And I had a radio show, a couple of them, and I arranged music for harp and voice and organ. I mean, we had to do something every week.
Yeah, yeah. I think that,
It was fun.
yeah, you do what you need to. I think there's a parallel in that kind of thing with COVID, what people have done
Right.
during that. They've learned to adapt, and I've talked to some of our soloists and others who have taken a different route and done solo recitals and done them in different venues
Right.
in ways that would allow them still to perform. Yeah, and so yeah, when you needed to do things, you just do things. That's the
Right.
way it works. If
That's
you have to
right.
arrange stuff and
You do it.
yeah, you get it done. So after that, after
Well,
Nova
then I
Scotia.
played Baltimore Symphony as first harpist, and then
So how many years did you do
I did that, as first harpist 1 year, because then I had a husband at the time that was in New York City. I thought I should be there, anyhow, I went back to New York City, and then I got some help from the concertmaster in Baltimore when I was in New York. I said, I'm really getting a hard time getting into this New York City.
The
And
circuit,
he gave
yeah.
me a name for a contractor
Yeah.
with a little orchestra society. So I called him up, and sure enough, they had a tour going with the Berlioz Symphony, Enfants de Christ.
Oh yeah.
And I toured with them, and then I made more contacts, and then I finally got a show, a Broadway show,
Right.
which was because the conductor of that Broadway show, who knew my second husband from high school or something, he was a really fine conductor of classical music. And I played a show with Mimi Benzel and Robert Weedy, and that was very singers that were opera singers. And so the harp part was really great. And this man remembered me from that experience.
Wow.
And so when he got a big show, it was Jerry Herman's first show, which was called Heavenly Days. What was it called? Milk and Honey. It's all about Israel, when Israel was just starting, and Mimi Benzel and Robert Weedy were singing, and he remembered me for that. And
Well, that's great.
I got that show. Well, then I got other shows because I played well,
Right.
and they remembered my name, and I met my second husband
Yeah.
in the pit. He was playing the bass.
Yeah. And so you guys worked a lot together during those days. I
Well,
guess.
he only was there because of having an argument with the city opera contractor, which they made up. So he was only there for about a few months.
Yeah.
But he went back to the opera.
Yeah.
But he had played with Toscanini. Right after the war, he played with the Symphony of the Air
Oh yeah.
when he
Yeah.
started to play again, and so he had a wonderful career there. But anyhow, so he was with the opera, and he was with New York City Ballet too.
Wow.
And he played both of those jobs, and he was there for first base. So then I met a lot of more people,
So you
and I played. It's a lot of shows.
You
I
had more
played-
than enough work. And I think that one of the most interesting things that we learned, I guess, in the midst of our Broadway performances that we do every year, the Rotary Broadway benefit, was the fact that you were in the original production of Chorus Line.
Well, no. Well,
Oh, did I get that wrong?
I was the sub with that, but I was in the original production with Don Pippin
Oh, yeah.
and Woman of the Year, and but I mean I subbed on the original show of that Chorus Line, and some of those actors were very good babysitters for me when I had a baby. They were when they were out of work or they needed extra work. So my
Yeah.
son had all kinds of different interesting babysitters.
Yeah, you certainly have to figure out how to make it work
Yeah.
when you're in an environment like that.
And then I got into the symphony. The American Symphony was being founded,
Uh-huh.
and it was Jim that told me about that. So I called up that contractor, and I had auditioned for Stokowski at his apartment on Fifth Avenue. Bring my harp.
Wow.
And he brought in his godson or somebody was sitting there on the rug. I don't know who that would have been. Well, that boy was about 16, I think, at the time. Well, anyhow, I played, and he grudgingly prepared me for that audition. He said, it's going to be all with manuscript.
Interesting.
And I was prepared, and he wanted everything backwards from what you would do. To play the Swan Lake, for instance, instead of getting to the top and bringing it out, please do it backwards, loud at the bottom and soft at the top. Everything. So he was just seeing if you were flexible, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
And also if you kind of really respected him. I think that made a big difference to him. You had a yes maestro.
Well, I think he was one of the great conductors of the cult of personality as well.
Oh,
I just,
right.
just think of Fantasia and all that
Oh,
imagery of the conductor, and
He didn't use a baton, of course,
he was an organist.
But yes, right. But what an amazing thing! And I also learned from my husband, who knew the stories about him. That at our first concert at Carnegie Hall, opening concert and all, Jim told me, he says, "Now you have your hands on the harp strings because you're going to play the toccata and fugue of Bach right after the Star Spangled Banner, and you'll be standing up for the Star Spangled Banner, and then when you sit down, he's going to go like that." And I was all ready. So.
Well, that got you some brownie points, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. So it was always a surprise. Every
Yeah.
concert was a surprise. And I was with him for 6 years.
Wow.
So I played a lot of different solos there.
And that's wonderful to get the orchestral experience, the Broadway experience, and all of that. But then after a number of years, you say you moved away.
Well, no, I was really in New York all that time.
But
And
then,
when I was playing in the Hudson Valley, I was still in New York City. I played the New York Jersey
Oh, wow.
Opera. I
So,
played a lot
okay.
of opera.
wow.
And I love playing opera.
Yeah, it's fun. It has a lot more emotion, a lot more flexibility
Oh,
to it, a lot
yeah.
more variables that you have to be
Yeah.
concerned with.
Right.
But yeah, so what else happened between, say, living in, it was at Woodstock, right?
Yeah, well, then I
And
got this an invitation to play on the ships.
Oh, that's right.
The
yeah,
Canard Line. Well, I didn't ever think. Well, I had these questions. Well, I have a dog and all this, you know. And do I have a private room and all this different stuff? Well, I soon learned that yes, I did have a private room, which was quite because I was an entertainer. There's a caste system on ship. You know, I wasn't the crew. I was not with the band. I was an entertainer, so I had my own room. And how I didn't have a window the first time. It had stars on the ceiling when you turned the light out. And you had to play 4 hours every day. That was my contract.
Wow.
And which was not that bad because other people had to play 8 hours.
Wow.
I mean, some of the pianists, and they had to play long contracts, but I couldn't do that. So there were 3 harpists, one from
Wow.
Texas and one lady from New York City, and myself. And we had 3 of us, and we divided up the contract so that everything was covered. And they would fly you to these different places. And sometimes you had to fly your harp and everything. But
Gosh.
finally, I did it for 4 years, and then finally they rented my other harp in the other room there to keep going around the world.
Wow.
Went around the world twice. And they just fly the harpist in. And all your music. And all your, I mean, we didn't have our music on
Right.
that, you know,
Yeah.
a phone or anything. You had to haul it around. It was one suitcase was full of dresses and evening gowns, and the other was full of music.
Yeah.
And a music stand even didn't trust, and a bench.
Yeah.
So it was, but it was so much fun.
And it is fairly lucrative, isn't it?
Oh, it was
Um,
very good pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even you had to pay the person and the agent, but it was good. I mean, and the fact that I could keep all my other jobs, that I
Yeah.
could work it out when I wanted to
Wow.
do it, that really saved my,
Yeah.
you know, being able to play.
And so you've done a lot of solo harp things. I know you've done a lot of recitals with colleagues. You have a flute colleague, and
Yeah, we did a duo for 13 years up there, and we played on the Rhinebeck series, a quartet, you know, the summer series there. And she was very fine. She was from Eastman School of Music, and now she's the personnel manager of the Hudson Valley Philharmonic.
yeah.
And I used to play with the ensemble from West Point. A lot of
Uh-huh.
those musicians were playing with the Hudson Valley. They're all very good
Yeah,
musicians.
yeah.
Really
that's,
good.
That's some of the elite musicians in
Yeah.
the military. Yeah.
And then in New York, I had a trio with cello and violin, and also a trio with a coloratura soprano and a flute
Wow.
and harp. And we played together a long time.
Wow, that's interesting.
That was a nice
Yeah,
combination.
yeah. Well, so you've kept sufficiently busy around here, even in retirement, I would suppose.
Yeah, well, at the
Okay.
beginning, I was playing a lot of weddings, and I
Yeah.
really, and the last wedding I played was at the, what is the place down near
The Dunes Club?
Huntington,
Oh,
across from Brookgreen Gardens. The other place, it belongs to the same
Right, now,
organization.
yeah,
Anyhow,
yeah.
I was sitting on the grass with a bunch of ants underneath.
oh, yeah.
Fire ants. So I decided that was the last wedding I was going to play.
Yeah, you put in your time.
I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny.
Well, we've certainly been so fortunate to have you in this area. and to have someone of your caliber and experience. And
Well, it was wonderful to play some of these other pieces that I have played. They're in my mind. You know, I can always remember playing the Adagio, from the Mahler.
oh
That
yeah,
Allegretto.
yeah,
And different occasions. I played that. I was supposed to play it the day my husband died, and I couldn't play it. We had
Yeah.
rehearsed it, but Botstein, now he's a conductor, or he was conducting that at the time, Leon Botstein, and he gave a nice elegy and everything for my husband. But that always, whenever we play that, all that goes in my mind.
yeah.
But Botstein himself had lost a daughter by an accident with a school bus, killed her, and he did a concert, and he had never conducted that before, and he got us from the Hudson Valley Philharmonic at that time, and I played that for him, for his daughter's memorial. So it just has these different connections.
Yeah, yeah, and that just the whole experience of re-encountering something that you had an association with Stokowski about, or several others. It just those memories come back.
Well, we all feel that when we play another piece,
Yeah.
and and there's certain intervals that do this to you.
Well, music is definitely very magical, and
It keeps you going, I think.
Yeah,
That's why I've
it
been
does.
able to play for so long, I think.
yeah, it's definitely it's a lifestyle. It's more than a career. It's a lifestyle. I was always told, that if, as far as a profession, if you can think of anything else you'd rather do, you probably should do it. But if this is what you got to do, you just do it.
Yeah, I had
And you
just
live it.
taken a job finding in New York. I wasn't making enough money, so I decided, well, I better use this degree that I have for music ed. And
Yeah.
after subbing in Harlem and stuff, I got a job in a regular school as a musician, and they put my name in the paper and all this stuff up in Mount Vernon, New York, I guess it was. Well, a few days later, I got this idea that there was an opening in the Halifax Symphony I heard about,
Yeah.
and I auditioned and I got it.
Yeah.
So I had to tell them that I wasn't going to.
And we've all had to do those things. I think at one time or another, you get set for what seems to be inevitable. You've got to do this, and then an opportunity comes
And
along.
then the principal then said, "Well, I know what you're going through. I was a musician."
Yeah,
So he didn't get mad at me.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, Nancy, it's been great to have a chance to chat with you, and I've enjoyed so much. Like we were talking about earlier, I can't believe it's been 16 years.
No.
I think the older you get,
The months go by pretty
yeah, they
fast.
just whisk by, and wow, I can't believe it's been that long. But it's just been a wonderful time having you as part of the orchestra, as the orchestra has grown, and this area has grown.
Well, I've just seen, well, I can see the progress, but I mean, from people before me, they have if they were only aware of the symphony, 25, 30 years ago, they don't know what's here.
Right, and of course that's our big challenge, is to make people who are coming here. So many of them are coming here from other communities, and they're not aware of what we have. So we just have to keep the word out, and that's part of what.
And now we're going to have many more people coming.
Yeah.
Because this was the busiest place.
Yeah.
My son is in the sign business, and he says it is so busy.
Yeah.
And he just can't keep up with it all.
Yeah. Well, that's a good sign for all of us as we grow and get out of this COVID situation. And
It's going to be terrific.
hopefully we can be back into our normal routine, as we're all scheduled to do for this fall. Unfortunately, we'll be without you, but...
Well, you have a very good harpist coming in, I think.
Yeah. So we'll things always change and move forward, but we so much appreciate you being a part of it and helping the orchestra grow.
Thank
But,
you.
wish
It's
you
been
all-
wonderful to work with you all this time, really.
Well, thanks. It's
Because we always had variety, and we
Yeah.
always given good programs.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I've been speaking here with Nancy Brennand, if you tuned in late, but it's been a pleasure. She is retiring after 16 years with the Long Bay Symphony, and if you I hope you took the time to listen to her very colorful and accomplished career before she came to retirement here. But we will be talking to more of our area musicians and patrons and so on as we go through the year. So we'll take a break and be right back with you. In addition to her distinguished musical career, Nancy is also an accomplished visual artist. You can view an ongoing display of her paintings at the Sunset River Marketplace in Calabash. Look for another Speaking of the Arts episode soon as we begin our 2021-22 season. Until then, stay safe and keep listening.